Welcome back to CBC News Network. I want to focus now on the pandemic and the plight of COVID-19 long haulers. My next guest is one of them, and it's Kelli Franklin, joining us now from Calgary. She tested positive for COVID-19 in December of 2020. Months later, she still continues to experience a range of symptoms. Thanks so much for being with us, Kelli.
Thank you for having me.
So I just want to start by asking, how are you doing tonight?
Not too bad. There's good days and bad days, but every day there's some symptoms. And today I think, running on a little bit of adrenaline. So I'm going to rest after this interview for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Adrenaline comes with live television. I can tell you that as well. So let's just take a step backwards. Walk us through what it was like when you were first diagnosed with COVID-19. I understand you had pretty mild symptoms at first, but those quickly worsened.
Sure. I first got sick on December 1st, and it was what I thought was a cold, just with kind of the typical COVID symptoms like sore throat, chills, headache, congestion. And I realized within a day or two that it wasn't the standard cold. And just a couple days later, after testing positive, I was having, a rapid heart rate and shortness of breath, problems with digestion, really, really bad headache. And I noticed every system in my body was starting to be affected. My nervous system was definitely off. And I was realizing pretty quickly that this wasn't what you heard on the news about what COVID-19 was supposed to do to somebody that was previously young and fit and healthy. But I thought, well, maybe it's still just going to run its course in a week or two. And basically, I never recovered from that. I still have all those same symptoms.
You have all of those symptoms. They've continued throughout the months since.
Yeah, some of them have gotten progressively worse, too.
Which are the symptoms that you're finding have gotten worse?
If I had to break it down into major components, the sleep is a big factor. I have, it's either insomnia or it's really unrefreshing, poor quality sleep. So there's a major sleep disturbance there, and the headache and neurological brain symptoms are quite tremendous. Like I can't even really describe the headache because I have so many different kinds of it. It's excruciating pain. I have like sensitivity to noise and light really badly when the headache's bad, and tinnitus, so ringing in the ears. And then I'll get a lot of chest pain and heart palpitations, difficulty breathing. I have brain fog and fatigue. So the fatigue is quite profound. It's like when you get the fatigue, it's almost like you're tied to the bed. You just cannot do anything. And I have gastrointestinal issues with kind of bloating and abdominal pain, all things that are brand new that I didn't have before. And you just never really know what you're going to get on a day-to-day basis. They all run in cycles and they're unpredictable.
And your hair as well. Tell us about what's happening with your hair.
Yeah, so my hair, it started falling out in big handfuls, probably around February, and it's continued to fall out since. And nobody likes to lose their hair, I don't think. Like, nobody wants that. And then when it grows back, I also lost the pigment in my hair, so it started to grow back like a white or cream color. And so to me, it's quite horrifying because month after month after month, especially early on, you still kind of expect it or hope to get better. The longer it's dragged on, it's like the trauma and the torment that you're going through is almost represented on the outside when you realize your hair's falling out, right? Because this is an illness that, for the most part, you can't really see. But when the hair's coming out, it's a lot more than just, oh, I lost my hair. From an aesthetic perspective, to me, it represents sort of months of pain and agony on the inside, and it's really showing how sick I've been.
Kelli, I'm so sorry to hear about all of these symptoms. How have they impacted your day-to-day life?
Well, I mean, quite drastically. Previously I was somebody who was very, very active.
I saw you hiking through Peru, for example.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was Machu Picchu. Yeah, so I love to travel and I love to exercise and do all kinds of activity. And I basically made a career out of being a personal trainer and a physiotherapist, with inspiring that in other people and helping other people. And so the obvious change is there, where anybody that knows me is like, oh my gosh, you went from being the healthiest person I know to being like super busy and active, and now you can't do anything. But I would say even if somebody wasn't really active before they got long COVID, it would still be such a drastic change, because some days are so bad I can't even sit outside and listen to the birds chirping. Like, that's how debilitating this condition is.
What about the supports? Because I know that there are groups online for people who have lost their taste and their smell, for example, groups on Facebook and other things. Have you been able to find other people who are dealing with this same sort of situation as you?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to find each other, because I'm lucky that I have a really great support system, but it's still a very, very isolating disease. And so there is a difference made when you're connecting with people going through the same thing. And as far as available treatments, a lot of it is sort of left up to us, where we're kind of trying anything and everything to get any sort of symptom relief. So you're kind of going through the motions to target one group of symptoms, see if something will help that. Unfortunately, I find anything that helps one symptom usually flares up another one. But I mean, I guess I'd be considered one of the lucky ones to actually have a really good family doctor, and I've seen lots of specialists, but the problem is the more doctors you see, in some ways, the more exhausting and frustrating it gets, because there's not really many answers, and I'm advocating for myself all the time.
I bet. What have the doctors been telling you in terms of how long this might last, or what's next for you?
Not a whole lot. I mean, some are trying, like in Canada, there's long COVID clinics popping up here and there, but unfortunately, like my personal experience, I've been assessed at a long COVID clinic. I have been since discharged because they said there's nothing else that they can do to help me with, basically little to no treatment. And I think the problem with long haulers is the typical medical model is, a test is performed to give you a diagnosis, and then from that diagnosis, there's a treatment, but we don't fit into that platform. So at first, it was one of the most common questions I got was, what are the doctors saying? Like, what's the prognosis? When is this going to be over? And now I've kind of had to go and find alternative therapies through, natural medicine or holistic medicine. It's really just trying absolutely anything that we can possibly do. But the doctors, I'd say the most common answer is, because long COVID is something new, we don't know. I get that all the time, and that's fair. However, I've been diagnosed with some post-viral conditions that aren't new. So for example, I have myalgic encephalomyelitis, and that's been around from other viruses for decades. So it becomes exhausting, because the doctors don't have any answers for that illness either, because it has kind of been brushed under the rug in the past, right? It hasn't gotten the right support. And I don't want the same mistakes to be made all over again with long COVID. So I think it's really important for us to not only get the word out to spread awareness, but to say, we actually need some help here with funding and research, and hopefully some treatment one day.
Yeah, so frustrating to run into all of those unknowns, and there are so many unknowns when it comes to COVID. But one of the things that I love about you coming out and speaking about this is that you're being so vulnerable, sharing your story with all of these symptoms and how long they have lasted for you. What was your motivation on that point? Why did you want to come out and speak about this to Canadians?
Well, it's kind of a vicious cycle that you go through where, I don't ever want to give up, but sometimes it's like, should I be spending all my time and energy on trying to push this? Because you have to remember, we're really sick, right? So it takes a lot out of us to even advocate for ourselves. But if I don't do it for me, who else is going to do it for me, right? And what's going to happen to us long haulers when everything does reopen and COVID is eventually gone. Like, I have to be my own advocate because nobody else really is. And I know I'm in a fortunate position that I am a physiotherapist, so I have a bit of a medical background myself. But for any long haulers out there that don't really understand what they're researching, I want them to know that they're not alone, right? And they should be fighting for themselves if they have any energy at all to do it. Don't just think that your case isn't important or that it's not real.
Well, thank you so much for coming on our show tonight and sharing your story with us. You have a lot of energy, as I can see. Maybe it's a little bit of that adrenaline from live TV. We really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. And that's Kelli Franklin. She's a COVID-19 long hauler joining us from Calgary. This is CBC News Network. Stay with us.